Welcome to the PinkpillRx podcast, hosted by Katie and Jay Fillmore, where we navigate complex and thought-provoking topics surrounding women with a focus on education. For shorter form content, follow us on TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube at Caters88 or PinkpillRx.
That's KATORS88.
If you enjoy this podcast, please give us a follow and maybe a nice review.
Well, we got to talk about something that's kind of sad, but kind of not sad, but it might be sad for you guys listening. We are going to go on a break during the month of September to regroup. We've been going strong this is episode 45, but we just feel like we need this time to regroup and to resettle and to come up with more content and just take a breather. Our kids are going back to school and we podcast. Like, we record during nap times. We record in between things. If you were thinking or ever contemplating having a podcast, just do it. You can record anywhere and it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, we're just laying on our bed right now and our kids are in bed.
Yeah. So, but we are going to take a little bit of a break. We're not going anywhere permanently, but we will be taking September off and then we will start season 2 of Pink Pill.
It feels pretty cool to have I've been wondering when I'm going to be able to put season 2 in when I'm publishing the episodes.
Yeah, well, come
October 6th, my mom's birthday.
So October 6th, we will be back. We will take the month of September off. So please don't go anywhere.
Yeah, we're still here.
We're not going anywhere. We're just taking a quick pause in between seasons.
It's been a wild ride and we just need a little time to refresh.
Do you remember when we were talking about a couple episodes ago, we spoke about organ donors and how women didn't want to donate organs after they died because they were afraid of mishandling during post-mortem?
Yeah.
Do you know that there's this whole conspiracy theory about Marilyn Monroe and saying that happened to Marilyn Monroe?
No. There's
a whole conspiracy theory talking about how her body went missing for a period of time.
Oh, God.
Yeah, people were commenting a lot on TikTok about it, and I looked it up, and I was like, oh my gosh. Now, it's a conspiracy theory. There's not, like, proof or anything.
Yeah.
But, that's, like, a real concern and a real worry for women. Do you know what else I ran across? There was a study in 2015, and it was of college men. And they asked college men, they asked them if they would force a woman to have sex with them if there were no consequences. What percentage do you think said yes?
How old were these guys?
College.
Let me think realistically. A third.
You're right.
It's sad that I thought realistically would be a third.
Yeah, well, because realistically, statistically speaking, in the world, you have 1 in 4 women who will experience sexual assault. And at this age, you have 1 in 3 men saying they would force a woman to have sex if there was no consequences. Now, they changed out the word forced a woman and they switched out with the word rape. So they said rape a woman. And said, okay, so how many of you would rape a woman if there was no consequences? And then what do you think the percentage was then?
10%.
Yeah, it was 13.6%.
Yeah.
But isn't that interesting that, yes. Oh, you know where I'm going with this.
I don't know if it's the same
There's
place.
not this understanding of consent. That forcing a woman is rape. That is rape. But if you use the word rape, no. But if you don't use it and you just say force, then 1/3.
Do you think part of it is... Why do you think it... my mind immediately went to, are men envisioning rape as more of this stranger, tie you up type, or hold you down, you know what I mean? Versus you're on a date. Maybe it's a first date. Maybe it's a third date. Maybe it's your girlfriend. Maybe it's your wife. And they're not giving consent but it's not like they're like physically fighting you, but they've said things.
That's rape.
I'm not saying it's not. What I'm saying is, are a third of guys not considering that rape?
Yes. I'm pretty sure a third of guys don't understand what rape is.
That's what I'm saying. Like, they think it's something else.
Which is a huge problem.
Yeah, because it's the same thing, but the difference is like 20%. So is that 20% of guys there think forcing and raping are two different things?
Yes, that's what they think.
That is... Oh.
Or maybe that's not what they think. Maybe they just can't sit with the reality that that's what rape is.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
And so they wouldn't admit to doing that.
Yeah.
I don't know. College campuses, though, are such high risk for, like, I mean, for both men and women, but I mean, for women especially. And there's like a season for it, too.
What do you mean a season?
Like, the highest chances of it happening to you are in the first semester of college. It's known as the red zone. It's the period during the first few months of the academic year, especially for first-year students, when the risk of sexual assault is highest. Research consistently finds that first-year women are at the highest risk for sexual assaults. Studies show that rates of unwanted sexual contact are highest in the first year, and the decline as students progress with greatest risk concentrated in the first semester or the first few months of school. The red zone concept refers specifically to this heightened risk during the initial weeks on campus. Researchers note it holds true across different types of sexual assault, drug and alcohol-facilitated assaults, as well as attempted or completed forcible rape. Some of the reasons for elevated risk include newfound independence, limited supervision, unfamiliarity with campus safety resources, an increase in socialization, participation in parties, and alcohol or substance use, especially in unfamiliar settings with new acquaintances.
I mean, I'm just thinking of your sister.
Yeah, I did think about that when she went to college. Makes you nervous.
Mm-hmm.
On that note, let's jump into today's episode. Okay, so here's the question today. How much of what we think we know about women's sexuality actually comes from biology, and how much of it comes from patriarchy?
And this is going to be... This reminds me of what I'm doing in grad school when I found out Jesus was not born in a stable. Like, just...
Okay, do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, well, he was placed in a manger when he was born. But back then, your standard house would have one room or two, and that was it. One was the guest room, and one was the family room / where you cook / where everybody sleeps. And right inside the entrance to the family room, you would bring in your animals at night, and you'd have a built-in manger or mangers there by the front door of your family room. And when Luke's talking about there's no room at the inn, it's not talking about a commercial inn. Like, there's no room in the house, is what it really says. And that's why they're staying where the mangers are at in the family room instead of the guest room. Because Joseph was a descendant of David, and everybody would welcome them into their home to help an expectant mother, let alone one who's a descendant of David.
I love how me bringing up women's sexuality and patriarchy immediately made you think about Jesus being born in a manger.
Why? Because it's so disconnected?
Yeah.
Okay, my connection is we think Jesus is born in a stable because the pop culture of the Christmas story.
Right.
So how much it is pop culture and how much it is like more accurate history or translation. So here it's how much is it biology versus how much is just patriarchy culture.
I get it.
It's on my mind. My mind was blown the other day.
Well, this story, doesn't go as what was taught in health class. That's for sure.
Okay. Well, let's get into it.
So we're going to go back in history. And in the ancient Greek and medieval European world, reproduction was often explained through a 2-seed model. Both men and women produced generative fluids, so like semen in men. Mm-hmm. And then whatever the female equivalent was when in women. It was a mystery, but they just, as all things are. But that there was something that was generated that then would intermingle, okay, basically. Mm-hmm. So for conception to occur, both seeds had to mix, which meant both partners needed to orgasm because they could see that when a man orgasmed, there was seed.
Okay.
And so the theory went that, well, then a woman needs to.
Makes sense
in
to them.
order, right? That makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So female pleasure was thought to draw out this seed, just as male orgasm expelled semen. Okay.
Okay.
So because of this belief, physicians and scholars at the time paid attention to women's sexual response, obviously.
Well, yeah, you want to repopulate.
Yeah, and they considered clitoral stimulation really important since it was believed to trigger orgasm and release the female seed.
Okay. I've fallen a long way.
They would even give like practical advice in medieval medical texts suggesting husbands ensure that their wives were aroused before intercourse to increase fertility.
Okay.
Okay, great. I mean,
You know what? Not based in science, but nice outcome for women there.
I mean, at
compared
least
to
there was a
today.
little bit of focus on pleasure, even though it was not for the sake of the woman.
Yeah, still not. That's true.
We need to remember this. It was not for the sake of the woman. It was for the sake of the child to conceive. Okay, so it really wasn't about women's pleasure, but at least there was some interest in the anatomy of women and how to actually pleasure women.
Yeah, the byproduct of this had some benefit to it.
Okay, so by the 17th century, new anatomical studies were done and it shifted reproductive theories and they moved away from the two-seed model. And once it was argued that women did not contribute genetic material, that women were only a womb or a vessel, the female orgasm no longer necessary. And that shift effectively erased medical interest in women's pleasure from essential to life itself to be completely irrelevant and even suspicious. And I'll get into that a little later. So when orgasms were tied to male priorities, aka babies, women's sexual response was studied and valued. And when science decided women's role in reproduction was passive, the female orgasm stopped being studied at all until the 20th century.
So it's like 300 years.
Hundreds of years. Yeah, like once science figured out that women could conceive without it, they were like, they don't need that. By the Victorian era, women's pleasure was actively denied. And dominant medical opinion suggested that respectable women were naturally passionless, while only fallen women, like prostitutes and adulterers, experienced lust and pleasure.
That's so like religious superstition. It reminds me of like witch trials, like which we've talked about,
right?
You know, Scarlet Letter with the Crucible.
So this gave rise to the cultural myth that women didn't have strong sexual urges.
Oh.
Or that orgasms were rare, unusual, or even pathological in women.
Those ideas are still floating around, though.
Exactly. This is where it gets its roots in.
Oh, man.
And psychoanalysts like Freud deepened this. He claimed that clitoral orgasms were immature and that mature women should only orgasm through vaginal penetration. If not, they were labeled neurotic or frigid.
Jeez.
So even when it was acceptable for women to orgasm, they had to orgasm the way that men wanted them to.
Yeah, that feels very, very controlling. Like, you can't... Well, if you do, it's supposed to be this way.
Between the 17th century and the mid-20th century, women's orgasms were treated as unnecessary, suspicious in good women, and sometimes pathological if it didn't match male-centered definitions. And that's how this whole female orgasm thing rose to be treated as such a myth or an anomaly or even a problem or a unicorn. In fact, until the 20th century, there was a term called frigidity, which was a medical label slapped on women who didn't want sex. They were frigid.
So it was like a diagnosis?
Yes. Like it was like more like a moral judgment than a diagnosis. But yes, it was like considered like medical adjacent. Like this is like what the title of that is.
Like hysterical?
Yes.
Dang. And just obviously no exploration to, what could the root of this be? Is your spouse not treating you nicely?
Yeah. What is the root of this? Do you not feel
safe with that person or, yeah.
The erasure of women's pleasure wasn't an accident. It was an active thing that happened. They were like, they don't need that because it doesn't serve us as men. It doesn't ensure babies are made. It doesn't make me feel good about myself if I have to provide stimulation other than penetration. So that's kind of like the history behind it, right? Let's just talk about some facts now.
Okay.
So it's often cited that the clitoris has 8,000 nerve endings, twice as many as the penis. However, guess what? That claim originates from a much repeated statistic that likely comes from studies of livestock, not humans. It wasn't until 2022 where they did research on the human clitoris and the nerves, and they actually found that it contained 10,000 to 11,000 nerve fibers. So even more.
8,000 was how many times found in the
Twice.
penis? So you're looking at practically 3 times now.
Yes. And so we just discovered that in 2022. And as a reminder, just like as the history of the clitoris is that its full internal structure wasn't properly imaged until 1998. And that was on a cadaver. And its erectile function wasn't mapped dynamically until 2005. We mapped Mars before we mapped the clitoris.
That's nuts. But I mean, look, so men in the scientific community were more interested in Mars than the clitoris.
Yeah, basically. Something I found out while I was researching all this stuff that I found interesting too was that Viagra was FDA approved in a record-breaking 6 months.
Whoa.
The female version of Viagra took 20 years.
I didn't even know there was one.
There is. It's an injectable. You have to inject it.
Of course it's not just a simple thing.
No, it's not. And it's kind of hard to get prescribed.
Dude.
Versus men, you just go in there, you can get prescribed it. No problem.
That's really, really wrong. That is so wrong.
Well, it's because, again, there's all this stigma around female sexual desire. And it's also viewed as like quite normal and common for women to have low libidos. So women's bodies weren't just ignored, they were deliberately deprioritized. Okay? I mean, what other excuse do you have for exploring Mars before the clitoris or for approving male Viagra in 6 months while the female Viagra version took over 20 years? I mean, there's just a lack of priority there.
Yeah. And it's still just it's an injectable and it's hard to get.
Yeah. We obviously know the term blue balls is universally recognized, right?
I would say so.
But the orgasm gap, we don't really talk about that. And blue balls, you know, there's like almost like not a compassion. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Oh,
buddy.
Oh, are you kidding me? Meanwhile, women over here fighting for their lives just to have an orgasm. Men are upset because they thought it was going to happen and it didn't. Welcome to being a woman. There are wildly different figures on this number that I'm about to say, but the biggest study that I could find where I feel like probably is the most accurate is they took 52,600 people in the US and they explored the orgasm gap between the genders and different sexual orientations. And this is what they found. This isn't just penetration. This is like all forms. Okay. If you just do penetration, it's lower. So for heterosexual women, they orgasm about 65% of the time.
Okay.
Bisexual women, about 66% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Lesbian women, 86% of the time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Bisexual men, 88% of the time. Gay men, 89% of the time. And heterosexual men, 95% of the time. But I would like to point out that heterosexual women at 65%, and then you compare it to lesbian women, 86%. I mean, it's not biology that's happening here. Like, there's a gap in skill happening here.
Yeah, that's definitely what it... I mean, you're right. It's not biology, so it has to be something else. And what's the variable difference there? The gender of the partner. Well, why would that make a difference? Well, probably because you're getting better treatment.
This is what's interesting, though, is that they found that women experience spontaneous desire. So just the desire randomly to have sex is 15%. 15% of women experience spontaneous desire, compared to 75% of people assigned male at birth. So I should say the 15% is people assigned female at birth experience this type of sexual desire versus 75% of men.
Okay.
And I think that's what we look at when we say, oh, sex drive.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because the other kind of sexual desire isn't called spontaneous. It's called responsive. So it's women like responding to stimulus that gets them interested in having sex.
Okay.
Versus spontaneous, just walking down the street. Oh, I want to bang.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that that's like unwomanly. I'm just saying statistically speaking that but only about 15% of women experience that compared to 75% of men. So I think that's what we see.
So there's stats on responsive?
Yeah, so about 30% of women experience responsive desire, and then the rest compared to 5% of men.
Oh, wow.
So about 30% of women experience responsive desire compared to only about 5% of men. And then the rest of the women, it was a mixture of the two.
Okay.
But I do think when we look at straight up sexual desire, we're looking at that spontaneous and we're not looking at the different kinds.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation.
And, you know, many women feel desire after arousal begins, not before. And that's just different wiring, not a lower drive. Here's where things get really interesting, though. When women live in societies that are safer and more equal, their reported sex drive skyrockets.
Okay.
There was a 48-nation survey, and they found that the sex drive gap is largest in patriarchal countries and shrinks in egalitarian ones.
Oh.
There's a big scientific community that really believes that women's sexuality is shaped by culture, while men's remains more stable across contexts. When you put women in safe spaces or in spaces where they have more equality, women's sex drives increase. They even did studies with this when it came to like chores and men helping around the house. Like the more men were involved in household things, the higher their wife's sex drive was. So when women live in societies where they're safe, equal, and not shamed for wanting sex, this so-called sex drive gap shrinks or disappears. Isn't that just so interesting, though, that in egalitarian societies?
It's interesting, but it makes perfect sense. Like, I'm not surprised at that. Because you're probably going to feel less stress all the time. You're probably going to feel safer. You're probably going to have a partner that you feel safer with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, but it's also sad that we have this whole like stereotype of women, and it's totally cultural based.
Yeah, it's obviously not universal.
No, and then it's also just heartbreaking how women's like were just like erased from the equation once they decided they were just vessels. And what's scary is that verbiage is coming back in the political arena.
What verbiage?
In some extreme circles, just women being vessels.
Oh, that word does not feel good. Because then it's just like you're just involved for a purpose. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that's all I have for us today. I thought it was super fascinating. It's a short one, but it's a goodie.
I hope for those of you listening, something was intriguing or sparked a curiosity, or you felt affirmed or challenged. Stay educated. Take the pink pill. If you enjoyed this podcast, please give us a follow and maybe a nice review.